I've said this before in my other reviews, but I had the Zelda Collector Edition on the GameCube. Majora's Mask was the first game I played, but I didn't really get far since I was at the age where I couldn't read. As for Ocarina of Time, my cousin helped me with the game. He would be the one to do the main quest while I just ran around Lon Lon Ranch and Kakariko Village. When my cousin got to the water temple, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna stop lollygagging and actually finish the game. So I did, with a little help from my cousin, since he did the Spirit Temple. Years later, when the remake for the 3DS was announced, I decided to play the game all the way through to get the full experience, and I started to understand why this game gets a lot of praise. Also in 2013, me, my brother, and my mom was in a fan-made musical of this game for a fundraiser for Alex Lemonade Stand, which is a charity that helps kids with cancer. I played a Stall Child, a Stallfo, and a Goron. My brother played Young Link, and my mom played Katake. This is one of the coolest plays I've ever been in. I'm kinda sad the writer didn't finish Majora's Mask the musical because I wanted to be Tingle so bad. Anyway, enough chit chat. You've read the title, you know what I'm going to review in this video. Let's get into it. The plot of the game is that you're an ordinary boy living in the forest when all of a sudden, the Great Deku Tree has been cursed and tells you to warn Zelda about the man that cursed him. Once you do, she asks you to find the keys to the Sacred Realm to get the Triforce before he does. The plan backfires as you take the Master Sword out of the pestle, which then seals your soul 7 years later. Once you return, you find out that the evil Ganondorf has gotten his hands on the Triforce of Power and rules over Hyrule. It's up to you to restore Hyrule by finding the 6 sages and defeat Ganondorf once and for all. One thing I like about this game is that it pretty much gets you into the adventure pretty quick. Once you get a sword and shield, you pretty much get into the first dungeon. As for the gameplay, it's good enough for me to keep playing, but for someone who's impatient, there are times when I'm easily impatient. Running around Hyrule Field is a nightmare. I remember just rolling all the time thinking it was making me go faster, but honestly, I think it slows you down. Thank goodness Epona helps you travel faster. As for the combat, it's fine, but to me there's a lot of waiting. I know most Zelda games have that, but Ocarina of Time, it feels like waiting for the opportunity to strike takes a while than the other games. Other than that, the gameplay is fun, and it's still a blast to hack and slash enemies. One thing that is unique about this game, other than the fact that it's the first 3D Zelda game, you have this magical ocarina that you play songs with. Each song has its own magic thingamajigable action thing. For example, if you play the Song of Storms, a storm appears. If you play Epona's song, she will come to you. If you play the Scarecrow song, a scarecrow appears in certain areas. You get the idea. Now, I pretty much have told you a bit about the gameplay. So let's talk about the dungeons. Let's start with my favorites, starting with Inside Jabu Jabu. This dungeon is themed around being inside a giant fish, so the whole area is fleshy and gross, and the boss is literally a heart. The one thing I don't like about this dungeon is freaking Ruto. You have to carry this bratty princess around the dungeon, and if you leave her in another room, she complains about telling you to be a man. What does leaving you have anything to do with being a man? You know the suckiest part? After the dungeon, she gives you the Zora Sapphire, which is an engagement ring. Yeah, she falls in love with Link when you finish the dungeon. Is there any reason these two should not be married, or forever hold your peace? I object! I ship Link and Malon, Black Blarbit! A Sheikah Stone told me that Malon's dream is that one day a knight in shiny armor would sleep off her feet, and she deserves that wish, Card Blarbit. Also, Ruto's next favorite dungeon, the Shadow Temple. When I was a kid, I hated this dungeon because of how creepy it was. But as I've gotten older, it has become one of my favorites because of how creepy it is. I also find it interesting that this temple was built by the royal family and has nothing to do with Ganon at all, which makes the temple way more darker since this was created by the good guys. Also, could we talk about this thing? This thing is freaking scary! And they say Nintendo is for kids. As for Bongo Bongo, I really like his design. He's pretty fun to fight too. The Spirit Temple. I like the symbol because in order to start the dungeon, you have to go back in the past and help this woman named Naburu to help find these gauntlets. Once you do, she gets kidnapped by these 2 witches, and in order to complete the dungeon, you have to go back to the future and use the gauntlets to unlock a certain area in order to complete it. It's a pretty cool idea for a dungeon. The boss starts off with fighting this Iron Uncle, who turns out to be Naburu, who has been brainwashed. And once she comes to her senses, the witches take her somewhere to deal with her later, and then you fight them next. In the first half, one will shoot a fire beam, and the other shoots an ice beam. And you need to reflect the attack with your mirror shield to the one that's just flying around. In the second half, the sisters fuse together and turn into, that. and will shoot either fireballs or ice balls. And you have to let it hit your shield 3 times in order for it to reflect back and slice him up. This boss is okay, but I really love Komi and Kotake. They're such a chaotic duo. I also love that their death scene is different from the other bosses. They suddenly turn into ghosts, with halos above their heads. And before they ascend to the heavens, they literally argue because one of them lied about their age. On to the final dungeon, which is also one of my favorites, Ganon's Castle. In this one, you go through different trials, and each trial you save a sage at the end, which then turns off the barriers. Once you do that, you go into Ganon's Tower, which is a staircase that goes to different rooms where you fight enemies, and you go all the way up to Ganondorf. It's really cool to hear Ganondorf's theme while going up the stairs. And you know what's the best part? Ganondorf plays it on an organ. Man, Bowser, you need to step up your game. Not only is his theme better than yours, he also plays it. Can you play an organ? I don't think so. And that's why he's a better villain than you. The boss starts off with Ganondorf throwing electric balls, which you deflect with your sword, and keep doing it until it hits him. Once you do, you shoot at him with a light arrow and slice him into pieces. Once you finish him off, the castle is about to collapse, and you and Zelda have to escape before it, collapse. Once you escape, you would think it's finally over, right? Wrong!
You thought this was over, man-child? I am immortal!
Ganondorf strikes back, transforms into and swings your sword right out of your hands. It's up to your light arrows to blind him, so you can either shoot his tail or use your big Goron sword to slice it. Once he's weakened, you can then grab the Master Sword and go back to the battlefield and do the same thing until he dies. Visually, this battle looks epic. Seeing the lightning in the background, hearing the music, even Ganon looks awesome in this game. It's probably my favorite design out of all the others in the series. As for the fight, it's very repetitive. I wish they did a second half where he gets more difficult and becomes more of a challenge to get to his tail. Now that we got my favorite dungeons out of the way, let's talk about my least favorite dungeon, the Water Temple. When I heard fans say that this is their least favorite dungeon, I thought to myself, was it really that bad? I don't remember it being bad. It's bad. It is bad. This dungeon is complicated. The order of all the rooms you have to go to is very complicated. Also, you have to change the water levels all the time, which takes forever. And there's also times where it takes you a long time to get to this one specific part, and then suddenly, oh, the door's locked. You have to go to get this key that's all the way over there. Oh, great! Yay! You know what's the suckiest part? Putting on the iron boots on and off, since you do that a lot in this dungeon. What's so bad about it, you may ask? Well, you have to go to the menu, which takes a while to get to it, which is annoying. The boss isn't even fun either, since you can go to a corner and attack it that way, without getting hurt. The only thing I like about this dungeon is Dark Link, which is a shadowy version of you that mimics your attacks, so it's hard to slice him. I don't know the strategy on how to defeat him, except you can use the hammer, since he can't mimic that attack. That's pretty much all the dungeons I wanted to talk about. So let's talk about some other bosses that I wanted to talk about, starting with Phantom Ganon. This is a clone of Ganondorf that starts off going into paintings, and you have to shoot him before he gets out of the painting, or he'll shoot electricity, which you can dodge. In the second half, he floats around the arena shooting these electric balls, which you deflect and slice him up until he dies. I like this one because of how it makes you think, oh no, Ganondorf already? And he's like, nope, I'm just a phantom clone of him. Next is Volgia, who is a snake-like dragon that breathes fire and creates meteor showers. How to defeat him is by waiting for him to get into one of the holes, and then come out of one of them, and smash him with a hammer. I really like this design, and the music that plays in the background slaps harder than your dummy mom's whip. I mean, it's great. Cool. Awesome to hear. The last one I wanted to talk about is the Flare Dancer, which is a mini-boss that has a fiery body and runs around the place. To defeat him, you have to use your hook shot to get the no fiery part away from his body and slice him up. I like this creature's design, and I find it funny seeing him slide to stop himself, to turn around and run into the other direction. That's all the bosses I want to talk about. Next thing I want to discuss is the story. The story is a pretty simple fantasy story, but as a deep thinker, I think about things that happen in the story that I think deeply about. For example, there's a part in the story where Link's mother is dying and asks the Great Deku Tree if he can take care of her son. And since he could sense that he was a child of destiny, he decided to keep him. So if he wasn't, would the Deku Tree say no, or would he still take care of Link anyway? Another part of the story that I also question about is the part where you meet Rauru, the Sage of Light, who tells Link that he's the chosen one, but he was too young to be a hero, so his spirit was sealed away for 7 years, so he can be a grown-up. So you let the man who could stop Ganondorf seal him up while Ganondorf rolled over Hyrule and hurt innocent people. Why can't you just make him a grown-up in an instant? Or is that too powerful? I know the writers made that plot that way for gameplay reasons, but it still makes me question the sage's morality. Link in this game isn't really interesting compared to the other Links in the series. I find him more interesting as the hero Shade in Twilight Princess and the Zelda fanfic called A Hero's Purpose, which you guys should go check out. It's a really great series. I will say that the idea of having years of your childhood go to waste because you are destined to fight a demon king is kind of dark. I know that in the game you can go back in time as a kid, so I guess it's not that dark, but as I gotten older, I find the concept a bit weird. I have nothing against it. It's honestly the most interesting part of the story. It's just as I've gotten older, it just makes me think deeply about it. Thankfully, he does go back in time as a kid, even though according to the Hyrule Historia in Twilight Princess, it didn't seem to go well for him, since Navi left him for some reason, and in that timeline, he is forgotten as a hero, which is pretty depressing. As for Zelda, she's okay. I do like that the reason Ganondorf got the Triforce power was all because she thought she could outsmart him by sending Link to go to the Sacred Realm, and she feels guilty about it, which is pretty much a trope for Zelda in some of the games. This incarnation of Zelda isn't my favorite, but she's sort of interesting. Ganondorf, on the other hand, I really like this version of Ganon. It's the first time we have seen a human version of him. As much as I do like Ganondorf and Wind Waker more than Ocarina of Time, I still think he's a cool incarnation. He makes me miss the time when most villains were just unapologetic. I have no problem with sympathized villains or redeemed villains if it's done right. It's just that, wouldn't it hurt just to have some villains that are pure evil? I also like that the friends that you made during your adventure become the sages. And it's cool to hear their comments on how much Link has grown as a hero. There's also this character named Sheik, who's this mysterious person that sometimes speaks in poems and teaches you songs that will help you teleport. You later find out that he was Zelda in disguise, so she can protect herself from Ganondorf, which is an interesting twist. Too bad Melee spoiled it for me. In the beginning of the game, there's this character named Saria, who is Link's best friend. I'm pretty mixed about their relationship because while it is wholesome, Saria doesn't appear as much, so we don't get much of an idea on what their relationship is like. I will say that it was touching once Saria became a sage of the forest, and when you leave the Chamber of Sages, there's a text that says, "Saria will always be your friend." Aww. My favorite part of the story is that there's this place called Lon Lon Ranch that is owned by Talon, who is lazy and sleeps a lot. And his co-worker, Ingo, is sick and tired of doing all the work while Talon just slacks off. When Ganondorf takes over Hyrule, he puts Ingo in charge, and Ingo kicks Talon out of the ranch and threatens Talon's daughter, Malon, that if she doesn't do her job, he will abuse the horses. If you go to a ranch at night, you can see Malon singing Epona's song, and she tells you to keep it a secret that she's singing that song. Ingo won't let her sing? He's going to get it. To save the ranch, you have to pay Ingo to ride horses and play Epona's song. Epona will come to you, and you make her jump over fences and talk to Ingo, which he seems pretty impressed that you managed to tame her, and asks you if you're interested in a race. If you accept, you have to horse race around the fence, and if you beat him, he gets upset and wants a rematch, and if you win, he'll let you keep Epona. The second race is pretty hard. Not only is he faster, but he tries to not let you get past him. Once you win, he gets upset, and being a sore loser that he is, decides to lock you in the ranch, and you either have to jump over the gate or jump over the fence that goes around the ranch. After that happens, Ingo somehow has a change of heart, and is no longer the jerk that he once was, and Talon returns to the ranch. Malon thanks you for restoring Lon Lon Ranch back to what it was, which is pretty heartwarming. Now that we got the story out of the way, let's talk about another thing I don't like about this game. You can't skip the dialogue. In other games, you can press a certain button that helps you skip dialogue. In this game, you can't do that. So you have to wait for a long time to press A. It's fine when it comes to the story. The tutorials are the problem, especially since I have played this game multiple times. You got a slingshot. This is how it works. Can I skip it? No! Alright. There's also this owl that's like, "Hoot hoot, Link, I'm gonna tell you something you already know about. You see, my grandmother was also Zelda, but Zelda was also this, and you gotta do this, and you gotta do that, and you have to target a slingshot, and have you heard the music? I've heard the music, you heard the music. You wanna hear what I said again? Alright, I'm gonna tell you the same thing. No, I hit yes. No! Speaking of annoying characters, Navi is the worst companion in the series. She will stop you and tell you about things you already know. There's a time where she literally tells you that lava is hot. Really, Navi? I wouldn't have noticed! That's enough for the negative stuff. Let's talk about the other parts of the game that I like. Starting with the Courtyard. There's a part in the game where you have to go see Zelda, and by doing so, you have to sneak past these guards that are in the courtyard. I like this part not only because it's kind of suspenseful, but also because of the music that plays in the background. Next part I want to talk about is the part where you have to sneak into Gerudo's fortress and save the carpenters that are locked in their prison cells. After saving them, one of the Gerudos is impressed by your skills, that she gives you a certificate in order for you to be free to walk around the fortress. I like this one because the sneaking parts in Zelda games are fun. So is fighting the guards. Also, the Gerudos are really cool, and are definitely in my top 3 favorite tribes in the series. On to the next part, the mask selling side quests. In this side quest, you help the Happy Mask salesman sell masks by going up to people to see if they're interested or not. The people that would be interested will give you hints that they would want the mask you are selling. Once you sell all the masks, you are rewarded with the Mask of Truth, which is a mask that can speak to Sheikah stones that give you secrets in the game and some lore. I find it interesting that the Happy Mask salesman, who's just a regular shopkeeper in this game, became a very important character in Majora's Mask. Out of all the characters they would bring back, I don't think I would ever guess it would be him. And I'm glad he made a return. He wouldn't have been one of my favorite characters if he didn't appear in Majora's Mask. And last but not least, the fishing hole. This is a place where you fish, and it's pretty relaxing until you get a fish. Then it gets really intense. There's also a guy who is the owner of the place who is a pretty charming character, and it's fun to listen to some of the things he says. There's also a photo of him in Twilight Princess, which is a pretty cool reference. Another thing that is fun is that you can actually take off his hat by using the fishing rod, which is a funny Easter egg. One thing that I found interesting about this playthrough is that when I got to the ending, I got emotional. I didn't cry, but it definitely gave me the feels. I think the reason was it has been 10 to 11 years since I've last played at least the original. While the other games that have been a part of my childhood, I would play once every year or two. It felt like being back home after being gone for years. Walking around the market, Kakariko Village, Lon Lon Ranch, and hearing Malin sing gave me so much nostalgia. This was such a fun experience, and I'm glad I was able to share it with some of you that watch my videos. Even though this game isn't in my top 3 Zelda games, it definitely has a special place in my heart for all the good memories of me and my cousin. I'll give this game an 8.9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time. And please, go watch the musical. I think you might like it. I'll put a link to the playlist in the description. Go faster! See what I mean about being impatient? Like these types of things. Why is this even in the game? I don't get it. Why they made him so slow?